If you missed yesterday's show, we had a good talk on NFL with Brian Blessing, then also talked NBA with Philip Rossman-Reich from Orlando Magic Daily. So if you get a chance to check out yesterday's show, that was a real good one, as well as Monday's show with Kyle Hunter and also Joe Everett. Lots of good content here. This is a very good time of year with the NFL playoff race, the college football bowl games, everything that's going on out there. And, as I've talked about in the past, I know you're busy. The holidays are here. You're out there buying Christmas gifts. You're celebrating Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Festivus, whatever it is that you and your family celebrate. So sometimes it can be hard to stay up to date on everything. So we help you out with that here on Bang the Book Radio and also over at BangTheBook.com. We've got picks and previews for every college football bowl game. My power ratings were updated my power ratings article anyway was updated on Monday. NFL opening line report, situational betting articles for the NHL and NBA, daily NHL and NBA totals picks, daily NHL picks from Parker Michaels. All the NFL games are previewed over there. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. If you use that BTV25 promo code, you get a $25 free bet just for signing up. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino as well. If you already have an account at DSI or don't want to sign up there, check out the Sportsbook reviews that we have over at BangTheBook.com and see which Sportsbook is the best fit for you. Two guests coming your way here on today's program. The first, Mr. Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Brian, how's it going today, man?
Everything's going great, and I heard you mention Brian Blessing been on the show. And for those that don't know, Brian's one of those guys out here in Vegas. He does a radio show. He does a lot of stuff. I've been on the show many times, but he's one of the key people that got the Las Vegas Golden Knights here. He's one of the guys that they've depended on the entire time, and he does a lot of press for them. He's a terrific hockey guy. I believe he's from Buffalo, a Sabres fan, and he knows a lot about hockey. So if you want to follow Brian, he'll give you some good hockey information.
Yeah, he definitely will. And I talked about that after I had him on the show for the first time a couple of weeks ago, that I watched a lot of Sabres games in high school, and he was on the pre- and post-game show with Mike Robitaille. And, it was kind of interesting to see everything sort of come full circle here for me, to have watched him and to have really loved watching that broadcast and the analysis that they provided, then to get him on the show here, pretty cool. And, it's just one of those things that illustrates, how lucky I am to have this Bang the Book radio platform. Brian, let's talk college football here. And something I want to touch on real quickly, and something that we talked about on Monday's show with Kyle Hunter, is that over the weekend, I thought that we had some teams that had talent advantages that just didn't play well. Western Kentucky, Colorado State. But what it looked like on Saturday to me is that you factor in these talent advantages, you factor in motivation, all that type of thing. It felt like coaching was the primary asset for all the teams that won on Saturday. Is that something that we may need to look at a little bit more going forward?
I think it's one of the things you do have to look at, and it's a whole conglomerate of things you have to look at for these football games. And I promise all the listeners that we'll give better information, we'll do a better job than our alma mater at Akron did last night. And so we got to make up for our Zips really looking bad yesterday, but. Yeah, the bowl games you have to handicap them a little bit differently than what you have to handicap all season long. And, I'm 1-1 in the bowl games. I had North Texas and against Troy, and that was just the wrong side. Troy played much better in that game. But I did have the Middle Tennessee State against Arkansas State, which I couldn't understand the money going on Arkansas State, and we were able to get that winner. But, yeah, the bowls just have to be handicapped differently, and coaching – and motivation. We kind of talked off air, and when you look at Florida Atlantic, you've got a coach who likes to run up the score. He likes to make a name for himself. And even though when we talked about this game last week, I said that I thought the line was too high, you have to know what the coaches are going to want to do. Steve Spurrier has been one in the past that sometimes did some strange moves to try to cover some spreads. If a coach talks about the spread and then after the game or something, saying that we were an 18-point favorite and we won by 7, and so I don't think it was a positive day. Those are the kind of guys you're looking to back because they know what the spread is, and the alumni obviously like to cover the spreads and they like to win the games for the alumni. So some coaches don't care. I saw a TV show before with Bobby Bowden. he definitely used the spread as a motivating factor for when he played his games. And you could go back and you could check the lifetime records of some of these coaches, and it's funny how a lot of them, based on the line, the last few plays of the game, they try to get that cover, and it's something you need to be aware of.
All right, let's look at this game here tonight, the Frisco Bowl, because I think coaching is a really good segue into this one. You've got Skip Holtz, a guy that's done very well in the bowl games there at Louisiana Tech, taking on an SMU team in a very unique situation here. SMU going with Sonny Dykes, as we've been talking about, who just got the job about 2 weeks ago. He's going to be the head coach here. They had an interim named, then opted to go with Dykes in the bowl game. Dykes is going to rely very heavily on grad assistant G.J. Kinney, who you may remember played his college football at Tulsa, about 7-8 years ago, something like that. So he's going to be heavily relied on here for this SMU game plan, a guy that's really never called plays before. And as I mentioned, his title is grad assistant. So he's a guy that played the position, had a cup of coffee in the NFL, so he does know, what is going through Ben Hicks's mind, what he's seeing. But, man, what a unique spot here. And it's really not a surprise to see Louisiana Tech down to plus 3.5 now at the Chris books with a number that was 5 for a while, then went to 4.5, and has now gone down below 4 at some shops.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you go into a situation like that and you're the new coach, if it was me, I think I would just sit on the side, and I would go and I'd participate in everything. But let somebody else make all the decisions. Let them get a head coaching spot, in the record book that, yes, they coached this team. What good does it do for him to go in there when he doesn't know any of the players and claim to be the head coach and make them decisions? I don't like it either. This is a game where SMU should have the home field advantage. They're only 24 miles away from this soccer stadium that they're actually playing in. And the first time I heard the Frisco Bowl, obviously I thought this game was being played in San Francisco. Obviously not. It's at Toyota Stadium in Frisco, Texas. And until this was announced, I didn't even know there was a Frisco, Texas. But, you got a Louisiana Tech team, I think played a little bit under what they were expected to do this year. But SMU definitely was much better than what they should have been. They blew away the season win total. But I think they were a little bit fortunate. And I chart all my stats are first half once again. But I chart teams that have drives starting in opponent territory, and SMU had 8 drives starting in an opponent territory, only 3 starting in their own. So they're a little bit fortunate there, whereas Louisiana Tech was 3 and 4 from the turnover standpoint. SMU was up 2 turnovers in the first half and 2 sacks in the first half on the season. But I'm not so sure Louisiana Tech's not the better team here. I don't know what kind of home advantage we're going to get here. It should help SMU for getting the fans there, but I'm not a big buyer, as we talked about, on the new head coach coming in here and taking over. I don't see what the positive is in it.
All right, let's go to Friday here, and we'll talk the Bahamas Bowl between UAB and Ohio. For those that don't know, maybe new listeners to the show here, Bryan does specialize in the Mid-American Conference. It's a conference that he's had a lot of success with here, both this year and in the past. So, Bryan, this game here, 217, 218 on the board, really, really interesting for a lot of different reasons. Ohio struggled down the stretch. They're a 7.5-point favorite in this game, but probably should have gone to the MAC Conference Championship game. Then you watch what Akron did against FAU, and you ask yourself, how the hell did Ohio lose to that team? Well, Ohio did lose to that team, lost its regular season finale to Buffalo as well. They take on this upstart UAB team that, unless you went to Ohio or you're a diehard MAC supporter, you're rooting for UAB in this game.
Yeah, I think UAB wants to be here a lot more than Ohio does. Frank Solich has not done very well in the bowls in his career at Ohio. If you're an Ohio player and you're in that position, you just beat Toledo. Now, we talked about it at the time that it was a game that Toledo didn't need to have where Ohio did. And, the Ohio players don't feel that way. They feel that they beat Toledo on the football field and they're feeling good about themselves. Then they go into Akron, lose to Akron by a field goal. Then they end the season at Buffalo, losing to Buffalo by a touchdown. Do they really want to put forth a full effort to have all these practices going into this bowl game here to play a team that wasn't in BS last year? I don't know. I think the motivation is clearly on UAB here, a team that didn't even have a program last year. This is a team that took care of the turnovers in the first half. They were +7 on the season, whereas Ohio was down 1 in the first half of their game. So UAB's been opportunistic. You can look at that two ways and say, well, what do they do to lose some of that luck on the turnovers? I don't know, because when you look at UAB, when you have a team that didn't have the players from the year before, you would think they would be out-physicaled in most of their games because the other teams have had guys that go through the whole 4 years and that continually bringing in players. And UAB didn't have a team last year, so it wasn't like you had players coming to UAB. These are the guys that they'd already had. So to be able to do well in turnovers against teams that are more substantial programs is pretty impressive to me. And now they're coming in this game. Obviously, they're going to have more of a way to wanting to win this game. And, you know, Ohio, the way they've been playing, you look at the teams that Ohio's beaten this year, they did beat Kansas. They beat Eastern Michigan. They beat UMass. They beat Kent. They beat Miami. And they beat Toledo in that game that I think we all know that Toledo didn't come to play in. So, really, what have they done this year? I completely think that UAB is the team that should be catching the points here and cashing with the points here. I like UAB in this contest.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me to see how bad Ohio's done in bowl games, because one of the things I really like about this team is that they've got that continuity on the coaching staff, where Solich has been here for a long time, and both of his coordinators have been here for a long time. There hasn't been, you know, that element of turnover that we oftentimes see during the bowl games, and that's something that can throw teams for a loop, whether it's the head coach or the coordinators or position coaches or whatever the case may be. You know, when you lose some of those coaches, you got to have the players lose some of their commitment from time to time. You don't have as much focus in practices or in film study. Ohio hasn't had that problem, and yet they've been bad in bowl games. And I don't know if it's because, you know, they haven't won a MAC title in almost 50 years, and that generally tends to be the goal year in and year out. I don't know. But to have a chronic underachiever in the bowl season without an easy reason to point to, that's something that really would scare me about laying a number with the Bobcats here.
Yeah, you talk about the coaching. I really think that Frank Solich plays for the MAC championship. This is a guy that came over from Nebraska, and he knows the meaning of winning a championship in your conference, and that's what they shoot for all season long, is to win. You know, let's be honest. A lot of these places that your MAC teams, you know, you play in Detroit. Is that really a big advantage to be able to go up to Detroit? And if you nothing against the city of Detroit, but that's the same area that you play in anyway. Now, obviously, this one being in the Bahamas, you would think would be something to any kid's going to want to come and play for. But we've seen it before. There's blowouts in the Bahamas. There's blowouts in Hawaii. So you have to have the motivation to play, and it all comes down from the coaches. And I really think that Solich is one of those guys that plays to win his conference title, and this is like a bonus. And sometimes if he treats it like a bonus, the kids are going to treat it like a bonus and won't be as prepared for this game.
All right, let's go to the other bowl game here on Friday. This one also features a MAC team. We're going to go from what I presume to be the sunny and warm Bahamas to what's probably going to be cold, potentially snowy and windy, Boise, Idaho, for the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Game 219-220 on the board between Central Michigan and Wyoming. And Brian, this was a game where, you know, we were in a holding pattern with this line sitting around pick'em or plus or minus one on either side, just waiting to see what would happen with Josh Allen, the Wyoming quarterback. Well, given what we've seen from the line move here, certainly looks like Josh Allen is going to be ready to play, with the Cowboys now a 3.5-point favorite.
Yeah, he said he wanted to play in this game if he got the okay from the doctors. I don't know if they've gotten the okay from the doctors yet, but somebody knows something. Somebody thinks he's going to play. Now, the question is he worth that kind of line move, 2.5 points, or whatever it was? I'm not so sure. There was a lot of talk coming into the season that this guy was going to be a first-round draft choice. I didn't see it. When you're playing in the MAC, you play against a lot of bad defenses, a lot of bad passing defenses, and I think he took advantage of that. when was the last time we saw a MAC quarterback that had a lot of success in the NFL? A Mountain West Conference quarterback having a lot of success in the NFL. It just doesn't happen. When you're playing against weak opposition, you're going to look better than what you have. And there was all that talk about him coming into the season, and I haven't seen him have all that success even when he was healthy this year. So I don't buy the line move on Wyoming here. Wyoming's a team who plays in Boise every other year. They know this field. Is that an advantage because it's blue? Because the other teams don't play on a blue field? I don't know. Being in Boise and playing on this field is something you can always tell your kids and your grandkids, say, hey, that blue field, yeah, I played on there. And that's one of the things that I think Central Michigan is going to look at. Most people won't want to go to play in these freezing temperatures, but in Michigan, as well as Wyoming right now, it's that kind of temperatures back home and it's snow back home, so it's not really a big deal. It's not like you're getting a southern school that has to come up and play in this. So I think the motivation factor will be on Central Michigan here, and it may even increase for these MAC schools based on what Akron did yesterday. Even though you see these teams play, they're all, I believe, if I was a player on one of these teams and they're in the bowls, you would want to see your league to do as well as it can. And when a league member gets blown out yesterday, I think it's extra motivation to support your league. So, this league isn't all about Akron losing 50-3. This league is much better than that. So I would think the Ohios and the Central Michigans, if they're coming to play, would want to give a better effort based on that, what happened yesterday. But, I talked about taking drives in the opponent field. Wyoming was very lucky in that this year. 16 drives starting in the opponent field in the first half, only 8 against them. And if you go down their yards per play in the first half this year, I'm a big proponent of this yards per play in the first half. They out-yarded the opposition in 3 games. They were out-yarded in 8 games in yards per play. Central, on the other hand, was 7-4. So you got a Wyoming team who underperformed all season long, playing in Boise, a place they played before. We still don't know if the quarterback's going to play. I don't think it really matters. I don't think it's going to affect his draft status if he gets drafted at all in those higher rounds. But I think Central's the team that's more motivated here, and I lean that way.
And one thing I want to clarify here, some people may be saying to themselves about a Mountain West quarterback having success in the NFL. What about Colin Kaepernick? Well, when Colin Kaepernick was at Nevada, they were still in the WAC. They weren't yet in the Mountain West, so he doesn't really qualify there for the point that Bryan was making. And, I will say this. In Josh Allen's defense, Wyoming was bankrupt of skill position talent here this year. And that's not necessarily on him. Obviously you would like to see a first-round type quarterback prospect elevate some of his guys. But Tanner Gentry, who caught 72 passes last year for over 1,300 yards, he's gone. Jacob Hollister, his tight end, had 32 catches for over 500 yards. He was gone. Running back Brian Hill, who ran for over 1,800 yards, he was gone. So, for Wyoming here, they just didn't have a whole lot to help Allen out with. And, I'll be really curious to see how the scouts and evaluators handle that situation when it comes to, where they expect him to go in the NFL draft. Now, all of that being said, what you have here is you have a game that's expected to be very low scoring, total in the mid-40s. You've got a spread that's starting to grow. You've got 2 teams in the top 30 in terms of yards per play allowed. As this number keeps going up, and if it goes up even higher, once we get confirmation of Josh Allen, I would definitely look the Central Michigan side because I think this is a pretty underrated defense. I know they gave up some points, a lot of that due to the fact that they turned the ball over a little bit too much, but they were among the league leaders in forcing turnovers. I think they had 31 of them this year. So Central Michigan should come to play. And we talk about coaching, and you and I have talked about this on previous shows with John Bonamigo up there at Central Michigan. Very excited to be winning hardware for beating rivals, posting pictures of him sleeping with the trophy. This is a guy that should have his team ready to go. He looks like the master motivator type of guy. And I think Craig Bohl can get his team ready to go too. And if both teams are ready to go here for this one, and you've got what looks to be a defensive struggle, I'll take the 3.5.
Yeah, you got Central Michigan coming off their bye on October 28th. They played 4 games, won them all, including beating Western Michigan on the road. Eastern Michigan, and Northern Illinois. So 3 of the last 4 games are against teams that are quality teams, and they were able to get those victories. I think they come into this game very, very motivated here. And as you mentioned, the coach sleeping with the trophy, and the coach being motivated here, coming off of a losing record last year, 6-7. Now they're back in the bowl. Central's the way I would look here. And to be honest with you, once it's announced that the Wyoming quarterback is in, I think we might get a little bit more of a jump there. So it wouldn't surprise me if they win this game outright. But it's nice to take those extra points.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what to do about this game. I mean, Josh Allen says he wants to play, but we're also 2 days away from the bowl game, and as far as I know, I haven't seen him being cleared, and I know you haven't seen it either. So it makes me kind of wonder here, do I want to try to gamble a little bit and grab that 3.5 in the event that he's not playing, or do I sit and wait on this a little bit? And, if it's announced that he's playing, maybe this number, whether it's adjusted or whether it's just steam trying to buy in Wyoming, it may go up to 4.5 or 5. So I'm kind of weighing that risk reward in my mind.
Well, the value of the 3 to me, I think, is, the number 5 is a dead number. 4.5. Yeah, I could see that. But if you can lock in the number 3, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put a half a unit on a game. If I'm in this situation, I'll say, well, I want to get something when I get at least a 3.5, and then if it gets to 4.5, I'll put the other half on it. Not too concerned about anything higher than that, but at least lock in part of your bet at that number. And if somehow the line crashes because he doesn't play, you've still got that key number with you.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I just think 4 isn't the most key of numbers, and certainly not in college football. It's certainly a little bit more important in the NFL, but with this low total, as I mentioned, maybe 4 carries a little bit more importance here. So, I think it's a good approach to take, is to put a little something on the 3.5. If you get a better number, go ahead and possibly put that other half unit down. I think that's a good way to look at this one. One more game I want to touch on with you here, Brian, from a college football standpoint. The Dollar General Bowl on Saturday night, game 225, 226, the late one there on the 23rd between Appalachian State and Toledo. Toledo's a 7.5-point favorite here. This is a pretty good group of 5 matchup.
It is, and I believe Appalachian State's taking a little bit of money here as of late. They're sitting around that key number, but this is one of the few where you've got 2 teams, at least this early in the bowls, we got 2 teams with a nice history. Appalachian State, the last 2 years, they go 11-2 in 2015, 10-3 in 2016, and once again had another very good season here coming into this bowl game. Toledo Candle signed an extension to stay at Toledo, which was one of the things that we were concerned about all season long, because anytime you can get a team that has a lot of success, I mean, he went, last year 9-4 in his first year, and then this year they have that terrific season. So there was some demand for him, but he stays at Toledo. We'll see how long that lasts, because anymore, you sign a contract 1 year. Look at the Oregon coach. You sign a contract 1 year, and the next year, even though you have a contract, you're gone. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, you've got 2 quality teams here, and we haven't seen a lot of that up to this point in the college bowls. Toledo's a team that obviously I like. They're the class of the MAC. But if you go back and you look at how the MAC has done in the bowl games, they have underachieved. Now, I have Toledo at a little bit different level than the rest of the teams in the MAC this year, so I don't know if that'll apply. But, again, you've got an Appalachian State team who's a quality team they're going up against. So, I really don't have much on this game as it is right now. One of the things I take a look at is how fortunate these teams are in the drives. And Appalachian State had 23 drives in opponent territory or their own territory. So that's going to tell you the totals are going to be a little bit higher based on that. And Toledo had 14. So the total may be a little bit high based on the easy schedule. For example, when Appalachian State played Louisiana, their final game, they had drives starting in Louisiana 16-yard line, 15-yard line, and 46-yard line. Is Toledo going to be that giving of turnovers in that position so they can get those easy scores? I kind of doubt it. So from a total standpoint, I think there may be some advantage on playing the under here based on something like that. Toledo on the season in the first half, they were down 1 in turnovers. Appalachian State was +4. Appalachian State playing the Sun Belt, a conference very similar to the MAC, maybe slightly less than the MAC. So from a side standpoint, I don't have anything here, but we may see, people know Toledo. They know they score a lot of points. Appalachian State scored 63 their last game. I think we're going to be able to get a number here to play under once the public gets involved in this game and look to get a little bit of advantage on some numbers, like I said, for short fields and things like that, probably will not be able to surface with two quality teams playing here.
All right, let's transition over to the NFL side. We got a couple of games over in the NFL on Saturday, 2 on Monday, no Thursday night game this week, which I'm sure the players are very excited about because virtually everybody hates that game. Well, we'll go to game 101-102, the first one here to kick off Week 16, Indianapolis and Baltimore. And, Brian, I think that this game is sort of a microcosm of the NFL season in that these two teams are 31st and 32nd in yards per play, yet one of them is laying 13.5 points, and that's Baltimore.
Yeah, it's funny because this is very similar, and I hate to bring it up since we're both from Cleveland, but it's very similar to the game last week. Obviously Baltimore is playing at Cleveland, and then Indy's playing at Baltimore, and they got to be the two worst teams or two of the three worst in the NFL. And I read some quotes that, it's tough to lay 13 points when you got Joe Flacco as your quarterback. But basically, and I said before this season, I love the Baltimore defense. And you see the way they've played all season long. They're playing, obviously Brissett over at Indy, who has struggled the second half of the season. He looked decent coming out when the luck went out, but and they brought him in. But he hasn't been able to put many points on the board. And you've got a Baltimore team that even though they don't score a lot offensively, you've got to assume that they're going to get a defensive or special teams touchdown here. It doesn't happen very often, but when you've got a dominating defense against an offense that hasn't done anything, it happened again last week against Cleveland. And if you're the Browns and you're got the ball down on your 1 yard line, just punt the ball. Just get it out of there because you're giving up more points on sacks in the end zone than I've seen anybody do in years in the NFL. But the Baltimore defense is obviously so far ahead of any other unit on this field. If you don't get a touchdown by the defense, you're going to get great field position out of this defense. So a lot of times people will look, and like I said about Flacco laying the 13 points, that's the only way I would look here. Baltimore obviously wants to win. It's a team that's still in the playoff race. Indy has nothing to play for. This is a game that is either Baltimore or nothing for me.
It's so challenging because I think you look at this Indianapolis team and very clearly, they have significant issues. And there's going to be a lot of turnover here with this team coming up this offseason. And you have to wonder if that turnover includes Chuck Pagano. It feels like Indianapolis, they're operating at a talent disadvantage here against just about everybody that they play this season. But they're still fighting for the most part. They're still out there playing as well as they possibly can, maybe to try and save Chuck Pagano's job, maybe because they're playing a lot of young guys that are trying to make an impact or veterans that are trying to get a job somewhere else next year. So that's the problem that I have here is that, yes, Baltimore is clearly the better team. Flacco in the offense has actually looked a little bit better here the last couple of weeks. Now, they've looked pretty decent against Pittsburgh. Everybody looks good against the Browns, and Mike Wallace and Benjamin Watson had nice games there. But they're starting to figure this thing out a little bit. But like you said, one of the really key things here, Baltimore, average starting field position for their drives is their own 32.6 yard line. Only the Rams are better at the 33.7, and the gap between Baltimore at number 2 and Philadelphia at number 3 is 2.3 yards of field position. So Baltimore's winning that field position battle. They also have great special teams. Sam Cook and Justin Tucker are both excellent, so they're going to come away with points when they're in scoring position, and they're going to flip the field when they have to kick it away. So that really is the thing. When you look at this game and you look at how neither offense is all that capable of moving the football, you figure this is a game with a limited number of possessions. And if Baltimore is going to have a big field position advantage, that probably is the only way that you can look to go.
Let's take a look at Baltimore since they've had their bye between the Tennessee and the Green Bay game. They played Green Bay, Houston, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. 3 of those games, they had the better yards per play in the first half. The last 2 weeks against Detroit, 6.9 to 4.6. Against Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh, 8.2 to 6.5. Over those 4 weeks, they had 6 drives starting in opponent territory, none in their own. This is a time right now that the defense is peaking. They allowed 39 points to Pittsburgh in that last game, and obviously a lot of that came late after they had the big lead. But, I would expect a real good defensive effort here against Cleveland last week. Obviously, we saw they dominated that game, and with Indy here on the short week, I would much rather trust the coaching over Baltimore over Indy in a short week. It's not like a Thursday game when you only got a few days to play, but it is a day earlier. It is on Saturday, and Baltimore is one of those teams right now that the offense is starting to click, and that defense is just riding high right now.
All right, let's go to the late game here on Saturday. Game 103-104. Minnesota takes on Green Bay. Minnesota now a 9-point favorite. 5 dimes throwing up 10, looking for their usual teaser protection line. But, this is a game where we didn't have a line up until late yesterday morning because we didn't know if Aaron Rodgers was going to play. As it turns out, Aaron Rodgers not going to play. He's on IR. You've got Brett Hundley, who looked passable, I guess I would say, while Aaron Rodgers was out with the broken collarbone. But you kind of wonder here what this means for Green Bay psychologically, to not have Rodgers out there. Do they show up? Do they try to play spoiler? They know that they're a big underdog now at home in this game. Is Green Bay a team that you can take here with a line that, quite frankly, does look a little bit too high at this point?
Let me ask you this. Is Aaron Rodgers injured?
Yeah. Yes, he is. I think so.
I don't think he is. I really don't think he is. I think they came back. He said, you know what? He was supposed to be out for another 2 weeks. He says, I'll come back and give it a try. If we win, we'll play it from there. And this is all my thoughts. And once they lost that last game and he got banged up a little bit, I think the team decided, you know what, we're such a long shot. They only had a 6% chance of going to the playoffs last week. They lose, they're out. Why keep him in there? He could be fully healthy. Why keep him in there? I think they knew all along that if they won that game, okay, they play it by ear. If they lose, then they make something up as if he got banged up in that game. And he hadn't played football in a few. He's obviously banged up. But if this was a normal game and Green Bay was in playoff contention, I believe they'd make some effort to get him out there. The team knows. Keep in mind, this is a team, and you're going to see the same thing with Seattle this week. Even though Seattle's still mathematically alive, the way they lost that game last week to the Rams, what kind of effort are you going to get? These are teams that are used to being in the playoffs all the time. Green Bay is always in the playoffs with a healthy quarterback. This year there will not be. We see this all the time where you've got a team in the NBA and teams that are usually in the playoffs. Not so much in the NBA because half the league basically makes the playoffs, but in the NFL, a team fades. I think this is a fade situation. Although it's a rivalry game and you are getting Minnesota at home here, Green Bay fans aren't going to give up on the team. They're just to be disappointed they're not going to the playoffs. But Minnesota's been kicked around for a lot of years by this Green Bay team. It would not surprise me if Minnesota wins this game going away. They still need to win because of the Philadelphia situation. And Minnesota, keep in mind, if they make it to the Super Bowl, they're hosting the Super Bowl. I want no part of Green Bay here. And we talked about defense as good as Minnesota. Same thing with Baltimore in the other game. You got a motivated defense that is the best unit on the field here. And Keenum has done what he has to do, a quarterback for Minnesota. They're playing Hundley, who's done well when he's been able to run the ball a little bit. But broken plays have been pretty good for Green Bay, but the drawn-up plays have not done well. And there's been a lot of talk in the past that the Green Bay coaching staff, the head coach, has not been one of those guys that is very good at drawing up the plays, and he's not very imaginative. I don't think I've ever said that I've liked, in this black and blue division, a road favorite at 9 points here, but I like Minnesota here.
All right, let's go to Christmas Eve on Sunday, and we'll hit game 111, 112 between the hapless Cleveland Browns and the Chicago Bears. And I'm sorry that we have to talk about this game, Brian, but I saw a really interesting stat here this morning, so I wanted to make sure that we covered it. The Chicago Bears, under John Fox, as a favorite, are 0-7. And I don't mean against the spread, I mean straight up. They've lost all 7 times that they've been a favorite under John Fox, by an average of 9.1 points per game, too. So they've come really nowhere close to holding serve as a favorite. And here they are laying 6.5 against Cleveland.
Yeah, it's number one, you're laying 6.5 points for the Chicago Bears the way they're playing right now is something to question. I believe if they played those Cleveland Browns in those 7 games, we wouldn't have the same record. I want no part of either one of these teams. Number one, because Chicago just doesn't deserve to be this type of favorite. And number two, Cleveland's going to blow any chance they have going into this game. How confident can they be, against Green Bay? They have that 2 touchdown lead late in the game, and they blow that and then lose in overtime in a terrible situation. And then last week, they've actually played pretty well against Baltimore at certain times of that game until they back themselves back. And Cleveland just makes, if there's a mistake to be made, Cleveland's going to make it. The run defense for Cleveland's actually been pretty good. I don't trust Trubisky in the passing game, which is where you could beat Cleveland. Line at 38's telling you there's not going to be much scoring in here. So you would normally want to lean with the dog. But do you really want the Browns the way they've done it all season long? There's a few stragglers that are still playing the Browns, and every week they go, I don't want to play the Browns. You come back and play them. If you bet for a living, there's not too many teams that are on the dead to me list. But with 2 games left in the season, the Browns are dead to me.
Yeah, and when you're 0-14 and you're still 3-11 against the spread, that's just historic levels of awful. And hey, we'll see what happens with the Browns going forward. But I did just want to talk about that game, especially because I think it's really unique to see the Bears, who are also in a tough spot of their own. I don't think John Fox is coming back here. I think Vic Fangio's done some good things with the defense, but he's probably not head coach material. They're looking at kind of tearing this thing down, rebuilding it, figuring out what they have with Mitch Trubisky. Do they go out there and actually beat up on a team that, everybody in the league should beat up on? I don't know. But, again, I just thought there were some pretty interesting talking points there with that one. Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. What's going on over at the website right now, Brian?
I'll be going in to do videos later on today. I'm in there with Cheetah and Marco. And we'll be breaking down some more bowl games, and we'll talk about some teams here in the NFL for this week. Did have a lousy week last week in my second half plays in the NFL, and I hate it when I recommend that people follow me for that, and then I do a lousy job. But it was just one of those weeks, and we'll come back and we'll get them this week.
And you can follow Brian on Twitter at @BLeonardSports. Bryan Leonard, thank you so much for your time, man. Merry Christmas to you and yours, buddy, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds great. Send everyone out there Merry Christmas and all the festive holidays for everyone.